And good day, everybody. I'm here with my mentor, my friend, Mike Persina. Thank you very much. He is coming from all the way from sunny, not California, but South Carolina, I believe. 80 degrees, nice and warm. I'm Walter, I'm the Dutch mentor, and thank you again for coming to join us today on our chat about leadership. I had the great fortune this weekend to spend time with 5,000 other leaders at the American College of Healthcare Executive Conference in Chicago. And my first mission every morning at 6 o'clock is to go read poster boards, which was right next to the center where all of the the published books by Archie were stationed. And I saw Mike's book, which of course have read cover to cover, fly off the shelf. I'll show a quick copy of that. It's never too far away. Leading with the upper brain. So our conversation today, Mike, is going to be about the upper brain. But before we get started, I know that you love the number 3. So we're going to try to make this in 3 segments and take it to talk a little bit about each one of them and how that relates to people wanting to become or what they need to have, the key ingredients to becoming a leader. But before we get started, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself in a couple of minutes, so those who are not familiar with you know what your background is, so they know that they can know from me to you that they can trust what it is that you say is actually meaningful and worthwhile to listen and read about.
Well, thank you, Walter, and I appreciate our friendship more than anything else. We have different relationships, but the friendship is most important. And watching you over your career and watching you grow and develop from the first time we had a chance to meet at one of my teaching sessions, and how you've embraced those concepts now for nearly a decade has just been very enriching to just watch you go from where we first met to where you are now. Speaking about that, very quickly, my life has been in 3 segments. Growing up, a very small town of 9,000 people in Northwest Pennsylvania, and going into the military right after college. So a 20+ year military career in the Army Medical Department, primarily in combat divisions. So the deployment of medical assets into a combat environment. I didn't get to my first brick and mortar medical center until the end of my career as executive officer at Tripler Medical Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. And at a vast region of healthcare supports, the largest care delivery system in the world. We had over 3,600 square miles of the Pacific and Pacific Rim to cover. And so a broad range of responsibility with that and the services within, both for retirees, active military, and the like. My professional work had been operational predominantly, but I did have an opportunity to do 2 teaching assignments, academic assignments, one at the Military Academy at West Point in leadership and development, which tied nicely to the idea of what leadership is, how you teach it, how you coach it, how you develop leaders. So the academy experience gave me lots of time to do that, both in an academic setting, but in the practical hands-on work with working cadets in the summertime in different operational environments where they go through the summer. It also gave me some academic growth time. I spent time at the Hastings Center in New York as a visiting fellow, the Medical College of Pennsylvania as a visiting fellow, and then did a postgraduate work at Cambridge University in England, focusing on the ethics and delivery of care, and did a thesis on the social justice aspects of care delivery, and then did some medical research and development time. So I had practical operational experience in leadership, teaching opportunities in leadership, and now research opportunity at the Medical Research and Development Command at Fort Detrick, Maryland, looking at human subjects and looking at the behavior of human beings under high stress dynamics environment, like a combat deployment environment, and what stress does to the human brain, what stress does to the human body, how high levels of constant negative stress affect your immune system. So all of that wove together to put me to where I was at a place to finally write a book about human performance and why the brain is so important to it, and what affects the brain in a way that keeps you from being able to tap into your intellect, your skill, your talent, your strategic plan, and bring all of that to fruition. And it doesn't happen if your brain isn't working the way your brain is designed to work to make the plan happen, if you will. And that led to the book.
Excellent. I thank you for that background, and it's always impressed by what it is that you have done and how you have converted that into meaningful teachings. That is something that actually people can take home and not just read about, but actually put into action. And I think that is paramount. And I try to do the same thing when I work with the emerging leader. It's more action based. So with that said, it is, we know now, and I know now that, having a base of a bachelor's degree and a master's degree is great. But neither one of those two degrees taught me how to be a leader. And it is, managing process or managing people, which really never should happen, but leading people is very, very different. And so I know that the book really spells out three different things, and I stick with your number three, of course. Why
Right.
don't you take us on a journey of the three steps on what it is that people need to go through, both, from becoming far more self-aware and a journey, because nothing happens overnight, to create these lasting habits and behaviors or this new normal to become a highly effective leader.
Yes, it's again, Einstein said that, a lot of life exists in complexity, but the key is, can you understand that complexity in such a way and then explain it in a less complex way, in a more simpler way? And simple doesn't mean stupid or it's mundane or it's trite. It's just being able to take a complex topic and break it down and explain in a way that's it's easy for people to understand, so they grab it and they use it and then they implement it. Right. So we're talking about execution. So in trying to follow what I know to be true about the brain, that the brain lives in number three, there's three key developments to moving from yourself and as an emerging leader, as a senior leader who struggled with leading yourself well, managing stress, managing the dynamics of emotion related to stress, and how all of that can get in the way of execution. Then it was, how do we take this and write about it with action steps that people can deploy and gain actual tangible results of effectiveness of leadership? And so we found a scientific base of three equations. The first equation is you. The second equation is about you with others. And the third is you and others driving to a common purpose, the why the organization exists, and fulfilling on the mandate of sustaining the organization for its purpose over time. So part one, that it has to do with you as an effective leader, and the two components of that, your self-awareness about who you are, and then self-managing who you are, specifically in behavior. I want everybody to understand immediately, we don't talk about personality. I don't care about your personality. There is no science base for your personality relative to how you're effective as a leader, relative to outcomes of the execution of your plan and getting results as a leader. Okay. And the reason for that is what makes behavior scientific. It's observable and it's measurable. Behavior is real. We know what it's like for someone to behave a certain way toward us. We know when someone's being kind to us. We know when they're being unkind. We know when they're being supportive. We know when they're being unsupportive. We know when they're being civil. We know when they're being rude. We know when they're caring for us, and we know when they hate us, right? So there's no ambiguity, if you will, no cloudy, no fuzziness around behavior, the way typically people have talked about personality being more subjective. Behavior is very objective. It's very real. It's measurable in terms of your behavior's effect on me, particularly the effect of my brain and my ability for my brain to do one of two things. And the way the term upper brain, lower brain came about is the way I process events of other people's behavior in my life and non-human encounters of other material things in the world around me. Driving to work and I get a detour. What does that detour mean? How do I process that detour with the fear of not getting to work on time and missing the first meeting? Or if I'm a surgeon, I'm going to delay my first case, or all the pressure and stress of just getting to work on time and something gets in the way. So we both have these human events and non-human events that affect the way our brain works for performance and well-being, our creativity, our imagination, our critical reasoning skills, our innovation, those executive skill sets of my talent and my technical training. So I've got my upper brain built for performance and well-being, but I've also got my survival brain, my lower brain, that keeps me alive, that keeps me safe. Now, the human brain is really great at growth and development, and it's really great at survival. It just can't do both at the same time. And so the key is for me to recognize that whenever I hit a threat encounter, whether it's a threatening behavior of somebody, and this is why having toxic leaders and toxic team members is so disruptive to the human performance dynamic and creating a culture of workplace safety for my mental health is so vital to performance outcomes. Because if I have to come to work with a mindset focusing on surviving at work rather than thriving at work, I will always underperform. And my underperformance has nothing to do about my personal motivation. It has nothing to do with me being disengaged, because I'm disengaged as a byproduct of the fact that I can't focus on being engaged and connected with my work when I'm coming to work thinking about how I'm going to survive at work. I just can't do both. So what's critical in step one, and you can't even get, again, I have to pause for a second and say, this is why conversations about engagement and creating engagement, commitment, creating commitment, how to create an engaged and committed workforce, right? How to reach different generational aged groups with what their individual motivational drivers are, is putting the cart before the horse in the old adage way, in the sense that if we don't understand as leaders why and how our behavior is the single most important predictor of another individual's performance dynamic, because my behavior with every one of my team members as a leader is a brain processing event for them, where they have to draw inferences and judgments and conclusions about my behavior. First of all, is it safe or not safe? Is it threatening or non-threatening, right? Is this encouraging and supportive, or is this disruptive and unsupportive? Right. Well, my brain's doing all of that, and I'm just processing with that with my leader's behavior. Forget about yet having to do with all of my team members. Right. You can see that my brain becomes preoccupied with trying to self-preserve, so that my self-preservation drive short circuits and overrides anything related to engagement and commitment and the final outcome that I produce in my work every day. So we go right to the core of what is at the heart of disruptive team performance, and that is the leader behavior. And the way to manage that leader behavior and create leadership effectiveness is we have to focus on two coefficients. We have to focus on self-awareness, getting leaders to be aware of their behavior on the one hand, and what their behavior means to the brains of their team members when they process that behavior, and then teaching them self-management techniques so that they always stay in behaviors that trigger upper brain performance and well-being, and they don't engage in behaviors that force me into a threat management part of my lower brain, which always overrides as a precursor. It's like a computer that comes preset with default software to keep the computer safe from an external virus. Well, then try to give it complex calculations to have to function when it's focusing on just managing virus dynamics, and you can see the tension that it creates. So step one, the foundational premise, is effective leadership has two coefficients, my self-awareness and my self-management. And because we can teach self-awareness so easily and make people aware of their behavior, the dependent coefficient on my level of effectiveness is my day-to-day management of my behavior.
Yeah.
I had somebody call me the other day, said, Michael, I really lost it. I shouted, I yelled, I cursed, I threatened, and I know I've just created a mess in my team. What do I do now? Right? They had all the awareness. They've been learning and being coached on the behaviors. And for fun, I like to call this neurochemical bartending, Walter. If you know how to behave in a way, right, that creates a neurochemical cocktail that lights up somebody's upper brain like the 4th of July, they'll follow you anywhere.
Yeah.
But you create a neurochemical cocktail that forces me to stay in my lower brain, and you're a threat, and I've got to survive, and I can't trust you, and I can't connect with you. And a sense of hope and well-being is lost because you're my leader. Performance, there's no way you get engagement from that. And it's not that I don't want to be engaged. My brain doesn't let me be engaged. This is a brain physiology. This is neuroscience leadership. This is learning to behave in such a way that you trigger a neuro response in the brains of people that they'll follow you anywhere on the one hand, or they can't get away from you fast enough on the other. And there's no option for leaders. When I teach this, I like to tell leaders, look, one of two things happen when you walk into a room waiting to meet your team or greet your team for a project discussion or a team meeting. Their upper brain lights up for performance when you come into the room or when you go out of the room. Right? And that's the effect you have on people. Your mere presence. We've heard so much about leadership presence and talked about in so many attributes. Leadership presence is about behavior. How do you show up in behavior for your team members, and how your behavior causes neurochemical and neurophysiological responses for them to embrace you and go upper brain for performance and well-being on the one hand, or manage your behavior in a threat response that causes them to merely come to work to survive, do the minimum amount of work necessary to keep their job and stay out of trouble. And what that means in patient care, when you've got people struggling to engage in their work in patient care, the level of distraction that a leader's behavior can cause to the functioning of critical reasoning skills. And we talk about that the number of medical mistakes and medical errors and trying to create an improvement in patient safety and quality, the number one step to improving patient safety and quality is for all of us to change our behavior and manage our behavior in a way that makes it easier for people to engage and connect their work and perform at a higher level.
So the cliffhanger and is, what advice did you give to the physician? Right. And when you talk about self-awareness, and we will do some great exercises that you can do about, what do I think my real me is versus what other people think of me, right? The perception of that. And then, we can utilize tools like 360s or reflective surveys, but we won't have time today to get into that. We'll do that in the future someday. Just as a quick one. So what was the advice that you gave to the physician or the leader who made the mistake of being reactive rather than responsive and said some things that he regretted after the fact?
The most effective thing you can do is you have to go to people and sincerely apologize. And an apology isn't just saying, I'm sorry. I told you the brain loves the number 3. Well, an effective apology has 3 parts too, right? Just like there's 3 parts to getting to the upper brain and staying in the upper brain. So this is the effective apology, and it works to create reconciliation, but it doesn't yet create restoration because the trust dynamic is so fragile that when you violate that trust dynamic with someone by behaving poorly, it takes longer to rebuild the deposits in someone's emotional bank account from that withdrawal. Now you can have reconciliation, but you don't have restoration. So there's 3 things. First, you say, I was very wrong. And you be as sincere as your behavior pattern allows you to be in the sincerity of expressing how wrong you were. Saying I was wrong, it means I'm accepting responsibility.
Yeah.
The number one most successful human trait for anybody in any professional field to rise to the highest level of success in that professional field is willing to accept 100% accountability and responsibility for everything you do in your behavior, and no excuses and no mitigating circumstances. I own every bit of my behavior every day. Now you get that mindset going, you're going to be in a position to be highly successful. Because 1, it'll minimize the damage that you do in behavior by not being self-aware. And it gives you the ability to immediately apologize the moment the event occurs. So you have less damage time for somebody's brain to process the hurt that you've just caused them, so that the apology comes faster. It disrupts that processing time, and the amount of time it takes for reconciliation is decreased. So you accept responsibility. I was wrong. Number 2, I am very sorry. You express regret that the behavior you just displayed into the life of this person for the disruption you're causing to their brain and their emotional state, their mental state, and their physical state. You put people under constant micro stress. I wrote an article about this. It's been published recently in multiple periodicals, calling micro stressors, right? You put people under constant micro stress, these small, consistent barbs of inappropriate behavior. And over time, they suffer tremendous illness. Their immune system weakens, they get sick a lot. Now you've got worker compensation claims, you have absenteeism problems, you have retention problems, and it all goes to the fact that people are getting sick physically and mentally, emotionally over your behavior. So you express regret for causing them this disruption of their neuro-based equilibrium. And then number 3, you ask for their forgiveness. Could you find it in you to forgive me for what I've done, knowing that the forgiveness doesn't bring immediate reconciliation to restoration, but at least it puts us in a place where I can start behaving appropriately for you, you can learn that I want to be trustworthy, and you can give me your trust again. And then we have reconciliation moving to restoration of relationship. And the more trust I exhibit and the more trust I deposit and less trust I withdraw, now we work into a high performing relationship of unity and continuity, and we can go make magic happen together. And that's what I told him to do. And that's what he went and that's what he did.
An excellent example of that. So since we are at the point of about 20 minutes into it, and you and I both know that our brains will need time to download that. Listen, why not end with a cliffhanger? Right? Number 2 and number 3, if you want to learn about it today, I would highly recommend you go and actually go out and buy the book. It's worth every penny of it. And if you're really interested in it, Mike will be joining the faculty at the Dutch Mentor in programs coming up in the fall. We look forward to developing that and really making sure that everybody understands in depth, not only what the theory behind the neuroscience of the brain is, but also very practical applications like this strategy around the 1, 2, 3 meaningful apology. We'll learn a lot more. So Mike, thank you very much again for joining me in the conversation today. I look forward to working with you in the near future and making sure that we have a material impact on emerging leaders. So they too get to learn to lead with the upper brain, which you and I both know is a far more functional way than anything that is reactive or the way it is too often done by force and not through kindness. Any parting words of wisdom for our listeners today?
Well, I just thank you, Walter, for the opportunity to share with your community and to continue to spread this. And what I want people to understand is this isn't an academic exercise. My pursuit and my purpose in writing this book was, first of all, to find a way to give people an opportunity on how to live life with a greater abundance, not just material abundance, but joy and peace and contentment in their lives. And I've had to practice this in my own life because, like all of us, we all have a moment of hardship. We all have a moment of difficulty that can come into our life. And most of the book was written during a time of a very personal hardship I was facing in my own life. And I attribute my success in coming out of that hardship and moving on with my life with joy and peace by practicing the very principles that I'm trying to give to others. So the purpose of the book, while it will help you become an effective leader, it will teach you ways to live life abundantly with a sense of joy and peace, even in the midst of very disrupting life events that come to all of us.
Yeah, and listen, I always start with saying, listen, there's about mental wellness, spiritual wellness, physical wellness, and relationship wellness, and your teachings, the book certainly support that, and how to continuously balance these very dynamic entities in our lives, and when things happen that are not as fortunate, how we respond to those will often determine the outcome itself.
That's right.
Again, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions, you can always come visit us at thedutchmentor.com. I believe the Fresina group, you can always find Mike or find him on LinkedIn. We look forward to continuing our conversation in the fall. By all means, make some comments in the postings below what your thoughts are about this book. Again, you can find it on Amazon.com. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to our next conversation with the next leader about the future of leadership. Thank you and have a great day.